Meghan is livid. Harry has met someone who is his age, with whom he is in love, and who is in love with him. And Meghan found out about it after she discovered texts on Harry's phone.
No.
I tried so hard.
They really hate each other now, and they cannot hide it anymore.
She was the villain.
How was she dangerous?
Because of the need for her to rehabilitate her image.
Harry was not in love with Meghan Markle.
He was madly in love. The veil is now lifting.
So the whisper making the rounds this week is that Harry may have found himself involved with another woman. People online are even talking about alleged secret texts, a reportedly furious wife, and the whole messy situation. And honestly, the funny part is not even the rumor itself. It is that barely anyone who has followed these two over the past year seems surprised at all.
These are the two photos of the women that people are speculating that could be the woman for Harry.
She posts herself relaxing with her feet up, moving around Paris, just a short distance from where his mother was reportedly removed. She also travels to Geneva on her own, then to Chicago on her own, while he keeps flying back to London without her. The pattern has not gone unnoticed.
I knew Meghan for a bit before she met Harry. Did exactly the same to me, you know. She did that to many people that she knew, that she'd either worked with or was friends with or whatever. It just seems to me she's what I would call a ruthless social climber, who just when people are no longer appropriate parts of her circle, they have to be expunged quickly so she can move on up the ladder.
Absolutely.
Again and again, the same pattern keeps showing up. They run separate brands, separate accounts, and seemingly separate lives. And now there is talk of another woman. Online, the reaction keeps circling back to two words: saw it coming. And that is exactly why people keep locking onto this story, because the separation people see online is starting to feel bigger than just a few independent trips. When one person is constantly moving one way and the other is moving another, viewers start reading into every post, every appearance, and every silence. That is where the speculation grows. Some users say the situation has been building for a while, while others think the internet is reaching too hard. Still, the conversation keeps pulling back to the same point. Their public routines do not look especially connected, and that alone has people filling in the blanks. The reaction is not really about one headline, it is about the pattern people think they have been watching unfold in plain sight.
Do you think your sister, Meghan Markle, has ruined Prince Harry?
The answer is yes. I mean, every single interview, every single picture, every place they go, Meghan grabs him. Meghan controls him. Meghan tells him no. Meghan stands in front of him. She controls every single situation like she is the star. And she's turned Prince Harry into a man of non-substance, you know, for her own well-being.
So tonight, let's set the mystery blonde talk aside for a moment. We are going to go through the year that had people saying this was over, long before any texts were even mentioned. The woman Harry was said to have loved and then walked away from. A video that some viewers said showed exactly how little energy these two seemed to have left. The month they each took separate holidays. The people online calling his wife a narcissist to her husband's face. And the reason a man who gave up a kingdom for this woman now, at least in the eyes of many viewers, looks like he may regret every waking second of it. Stay with me, because this one comes with receipts.
The girl, woman, girlfriend, friend, however you want to put it, and I'm putting it like this for legal reasons, resides, and I'm not going to say if it's actually in Montecito or near Montecito, but it's in the environs. People have seen them together. Oh dear, my goodness, Harry's growing. Is it a backbone? Or, my goodness, maybe he's not going to be able to juggle those balls outside of windows anymore, because maybe they're going to be attached instead of detached. That would be progress, wouldn't it?
Let's go right back. Before Meghan, there was the one woman many people say Harry seemed genuinely happy standing beside. Chelsea Davy, the Zimbabwe-born blonde who often came off relaxed, barefoot, and seemingly uninterested in palace rules, or all the formal protocol. On and off, the two of them were linked for nearly 7 years.
Yeah, he loved her a lot, and she really loved him, and they had great fun together. And he liked it because she wasn't worried about the royal family. That wasn't a big deal for her. She just fitted in very easily.
When he took the witness box against the newspapers, he did not start with policy or some big public principle. He started with her. He directly blamed the press for damaging the relationship he described as the one that made him happiest, and the detail he shared was unsettling. He spoke about the paranoia, the feeling that he was being watched all the time and could not trust anyone around him. Then there was the claim that some online discussions suggested a tracking device was found on her car. That is where this starts to feel bigger than a simple breakup story, because once people believe the outside pressure got that intense, every later move gets judged through that lens. Online commenters keep circling back to the idea that the relationship was never really given room to breathe, and that constant attention may have changed the way both people showed up in public. Whether that is fair or not is a different question, but it is exactly why the discussion keeps dragging Harry back into the same emotional territory. And if you look at the way viewers talk about it, the old relationship is not just being remembered as a past chapter, it is being used as a comparison point. People are asking what went wrong when the distance started showing, and whether the image they saw on the outside matched what was happening behind the scenes. None of that is confirmed, of course, but the speculation keeps building because the contrast is so sharp. So when the internet now revisits his choices, it is not coming out of nowhere. It is tied to a longer story that many viewers think already had warning signs, and that is what makes the current chatter hit so hard.
Totally miserable, totally allowing his negative past to take over him, all of these court battles, and just a great sense of sadness, actually, and anger connected to him.
Private arguments reportedly made their way into the papers, and when the pair finally split, the headlines seemed to treat it like a victory lap, almost celebrating the breakup. He has also said that the same kind of pressure may have affected his friendships too, leaving him suspicious of people in his own circle.
Nothing can actually get through to him to be happy now. He just feels it. It's everything's wrong. So he started having affairs with all sorts of other girls, and she got very upset, and he didn't go and see her for a long time. So she went off and left him. Now that's his fault, 100% his fault.
This year, when he returned to the witness box in the Daily Mail case, he described what happened to that romance as a nightmare. That was his wording, not mine. And in his own book, he went even further than many expected. He suggested he could not bring himself to pull Chelsea into that world, saying he worried the press would relentlessly pursue her, and that if he had truly had a choice, he may not have wanted that life either. Read that back slowly. He is on the record saying he might have walked away from the whole royal machine if circumstances had been different, and that the pressure seemed to take away the relationship he believed he loved. And according to the way he tells it, Chelsea was not the only one caught in that kind of pressure.
Prince Harry is heartbroken all over again. Now, of course, this is something that he is never going to admit publicly, especially as his marriage to Meghan Markle crumbles.
Cressida Bonus, the girlfriend who came after, reportedly stepped back for much the same reason. She took one long look at the royal fishbowl and decided she wanted no part of it. Two free spirits, both of them clearly fond of him, both of them seeing that life and choosing to walk away from the spotlight. And here is the part the fairy tale crowd seems to skip over. Chelsea did not quietly disappear in frustration. She showed up at the chapel in 2018 and watched Harry marry Meghan, smiling for the cameras like everyone else. The one who got away was right there in the pew, watching him enter the exact kind of circus he once said he wanted to spare her from. He married the woman he would later describe in unhappy terms, while the woman who once made him feel at peace sat there and applauded. That is why the reaction online is landing so strongly, because people are not looking at this as one isolated headline. They are treating it like the latest chapter in a much longer pattern, where every relationship gets pulled into the same spotlight and every decision gets read as a warning sign. Some viewers say that makes the current gossip feel less random and more like part of a familiar cycle. And once that mindset takes hold, the conversation gets harder to stop. Even small details start getting picked apart, not because anything has been proven, but because the public is already looking for meaning in every move. That is also why the talk keeps shifting away from who said what and toward what this all suggests about the pressure around him, the choices he made, and the people who ended up caught in the middle. So when commentators bring up the women linked to that chapter of his life, they are really pointing to something bigger, the idea that the same environment may have shaped every part of the story. Whether that is a fair reading or just internet hindsight is still up for debate, but it explains why the discussion refuses to cool down.
How many tears left I? How many? I think we'd better get a bottle of champagne to sort of get everybody calm.
That sounds like something a soap would reject for being too on the nose. So look at where he ended up. He did not really get away from the circus. Instead, he married the woman at the center of it all and took the entire spectacle to California. Chelsea kept her distance from the cameras, while Meghan arrived with a Netflix crew not far behind. You really could not script a sharper punchline if you tried all night.
The simmering tension between the duplicitous Duke and his facelift-enhanced wife. Here's the red carpet arrival.
Hey, Harry, where are you going?
Hey, Harry, where are you going? That was the moment many people felt said the quiet part out loud. Last autumn, during Paris Fashion Week, Meghan was in Paris for the Balenciaga show, and she shared a short clip on her own Instagram. It showed a nighttime car ride, with city lights sliding past the window, while she sat back in the rear seat, heels resting on the seat beside her, filming her shoes as she moved through the middle of Paris. For a lot of viewers, the whole thing landed as more than just a casual post. It felt like a carefully framed image that got people talking almost immediately.
This is her in the car videoing herself with her legs up as she went past the tunnel in which Diana Spencer was so tragically killed in Paris.
She was cruising along the river, not far from the underpass where Harry's mother was involved in that tragic car incident at night, while photographers had once crowded the area. The Paris tunnel connection is exactly what people kept bringing up online, so when his wife chose to lift her feet, film her shoes, and give it a polished, ad-like feel on that same stretch of riverbank, a lot of viewers thought the timing looked wildly tone-deaf. And that is exactly why the reaction did not stay contained to one post. Once people started connecting the clip to that location, the discussion shifted from a simple style moment to something much more loaded, at least in the eyes of online commenters. Some viewers said the optics alone were enough to make the whole thing feel careless, while others argued that the internet was reading too much into a short video. Either way, the clip kept circulating because it hit that uncomfortable mix of celebrity image, old memories, and public scrutiny all at once. That kind of response is hard to ignore because it shows how quickly a small moment can turn into a wider debate about judgment, timing, and what people choose to put online. And once that conversation starts, every new detail gets pulled into it, whether fair or not. The result is a storyline that keeps expanding, with people watching closely for the next move and wondering why this pattern keeps following him around.
This is gross and grim and deranged on every level.
You really could not make it up. Her team later said she had not realized just how close she was to that spot, and people online immediately had opinions about that explanation. Take that however you want. Either she truly had no idea where she was in the one city where her husband's mother, tragic passing in that tragic incident, or she knew exactly where she was and went ahead with it anyway. There is not much room for a middle ground there, and neither version makes for a good look. Even some of the usual defenders online seem to call this one far beyond careless.
Well, how about having some thought towards your husband's feelings when you're in the same city his mom died in, running around, having a joyride in Paris near where she lost her life?
One royal commentator just sat there sounding genuinely baffled, saying he could not even begin to understand what she might have been thinking. And when you look at the setting, that reaction makes a little more sense. She was not in Paris for anything solemn. She was there for Fashion Week, sitting front row at the big shows and leaning into that polished, influencer-style image that had everyone watching.
Meghan is doing her own thing. Harry, go whatever with you. I'm doing what I want to do.
A cheerful little moment, and out of all the places in the city, she apparently chose that same stretch of riverbank to lift her feet and hit record. The lack of awareness, as people online saw it, was almost hard to ignore. And what makes it hit even harder is this. Because this is a man who, just a couple of years ago, told the public that a paparazzi chase through the streets of New York had left him shaken and scared. And that is why this whole conversation keeps getting bigger online, because it is not just about one clip or one location. It is about the way people have started reading every move through a much wider lens. To supporters, it can feel like the internet is blowing a small moment out of proportion. To critics, though, it looks like another example of someone staying a little too close to controversy and then acting surprised when people notice. Once that kind of reaction takes over, the original point almost stops mattering. The discussion becomes about judgment, public image, and whether the explanation sounds believable enough to calm things down. And in this case, the gap between what was said and how it landed online only seemed to make people talk more. That is the tricky part for anyone living in the spotlight. Even a short, harmless-looking moment can turn into a much larger story when it touches an old wound or a sensitive memory. So now the clip is not being treated as just another travel post. It is being pulled into a much louder argument about awareness, timing, and whether some people in the public eye understand how closely everything they post gets watched.
Especially when he's on the BBC saying that it's not safe enough for my family in the UK, but it's safe enough for Meghan to be alone in Paris, literally engaging with the paparazzi you say killed your mother.
His mother, a car, cameras in the night. Harry said it out loud, and that is exactly why this subject still lands so hard for him. For supporters, this was never just another headline. It was the fear that history might be repeating itself in a way he never wanted to face. And then there is his wife, feet up in a Paris car, filming the moment for social media. People online called that move bold, even a little out of touch. You do not need an official statement from Montecito to imagine how that may have played at home. If people want to know whether a marriage is under real strain, they often say, the calendar tells the story better than any press release. This year, their schedule has looked like two separate lives that barely overlap. Just look at 1 month, and the distance starts to show.
Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Scamalot, she has taken her scams abroad.
This May, Meghan was said to have flown to Geneva on her own for a major solo speech, taking the spotlight by herself and drawing a standing ovation, with Harry not seen at the event. Just days earlier, she had also headed to Chicago alone. No Harry, no young family members, just Meghan doing her own thing on the other side of the country, and this does not seem like a one-time moment. In the view of online observers, she has built up a full solo social calendar, from a museum gala to a young people's hospital gala, where she wore a dress from years ago and again showed up on her own.
She wants to showcase that image to the world that she is the one who's the boss, but she's not really the boss.
Then there was the pledge dinner, a red carpet appearance, and a tribute night for her friend Tyler Perry, and each time, the seat beside her that many people would expect her husband to fill seemed to be empty. Online observers have pointed out that she appears to have a busier social calendar than plenty of people half her age, and she has been doing it all on her own. One tabloid count even suggested that Harry had not been seen at her side for more than 40 days. And that is exactly why people keep reading so much into it. Because once a pattern starts forming online, every public appearance gets treated like another clue. A single event might not mean much on its own, but when viewers think they are seeing the same distance, the same solo trips, and the same empty space where a spouse would usually be, the conversation naturally gets louder. What makes this even more delicate is that none of this comes with a clean explanation that shuts the chatter down. So instead of the discussion fading, it keeps getting reshaped by screenshots, reactions, and people picking apart the smallest details for meaning. Supporters may say the internet is overreaching, while critics argue that repeated solo appearances are hard to ignore. Either way, the result is the same. The story stops being about one moment and turns into a broader question about image, privacy, and how much distance the public is willing to notice before it starts asking bigger questions. And once that happens, even the quietest update can feel like it is carrying a lot more weight than it should.
She tries to direct and show people what to do because she's a controller. And that's what we see in her body language. That is her showing control because she is control obsessed.
Take the tabloid math with a grain of salt, but the point still comes through. That kind of counting may not tell the whole story, yet it is exactly why people keep reading into every move. There has even been online chatter that she may have floated the idea of a vow renewal as a way to smooth over the cracks. though that remains unverified. And that detail alone has people talking, because vow renewals usually come up when a relationship is trying to reset something that feels strained. It cuts both ways, too. Harry keeps heading back to Britain without her, again this month, just like the last trip, and the one before that.
When you start to see a marriage break down the way Harry and Meghan's marriage has clearly broken down, you start to speculate on what could be going on, and it would make sense.
He will not even stay in royal lodging when he is over there, and she never seems to join him. The official explanation is the security dispute, and sure, that is the version being put out there. But online, people cannot help noticing how convenient it looks that the very issue keeping this reportedly devoted husband away from his family is also the same one that lets him jet across an ocean and leave them behind whenever he chooses.
And I don't think Meghan is happy at all. How could she be? I mean, look, the girl's whole has ever is crumbled. Harry's talking about going back. How does Meghan feel about that? I heard that she wants to go back. No, she don't. No, she doesn't. I mean, look, this girl is trying to do everything she can to have an independent life with a career in Hollywood. That's what she's going after. That's what she wants.
And here is the part that really stands out. He has said openly that he wants to bring Meghan and the children over for a visit. He says he wants to, but somehow the visit never seems to happen. It leaves people wondering how a man can keep describing family plans in public, while, at least from the outside, the gap between those words and his actual travel keeps growing. And according to the online chatter, none of this even started with a mystery woman. 2 years ago, the two of them quietly split their public and professional lives in half. Separate Instagram accounts, her Netflix deal and jam brand on one side, his Invictus work and polo projects on the other. People politely called it a professional separation, very polished, very amicable, but critics pointed out that you do not usually create that kind of business divide if everything still feels tightly connected. The separate lives did not begin with an affair, they began with a spreadsheet. And that is why the chatter keeps sticking, because once people decide a relationship looks split on the surface, they start treating every separate move like part of the same bigger picture. A quick trip here, a solo appearance there, a quiet gap in between. It all gets stitched together online into a story that may not be fully fair, but it is definitely hard to shake. That is also why the distinction between public image and private reality matters so much here. On the outside, everything can still look polished and carefully managed, but the internet tends to focus on the spaces in between, the missed moments, the awkward timing, and the things that are never fully explained. Supporters may see routine scheduling and family logistics, while critics see distance that keeps getting harder to dismiss. So even without any fresh confirmation, the conversation keeps moving, because the public is not just reacting to one rumor anymore. It is reacting to the pattern people think they see, and that is exactly what gives the whole thing staying power.
We're gonna have this whiny little wanker back in the United Kingdom, back demanding security paid for by us. No, honestly, part of me thinks the best possible punishment for the Duke of Delusion, after accusing the British royal family of being racist, after making the late Queen Elizabeth II's dying days a misery, after putting Prince Philip through God knows what on his deathbed, part of me thinks the best punishment for him is to actually have to live in perpetuity with one of the worst women to ever exist.
Right? Let me say the part the more polite voices are skipping. The picture some critics are trying to draw now is of a man who, in their view, got completely swallowed up by the whole situation. One of the biggest names in American television has even gone on air and called Meghan a malignant narcissist. Those exact 2 words were said out loud and on the record, and according to online discussion, she is far from the only person being talked about that way.
But she is a malignant narcissist who cannot get enough of herself while she simultaneously plays the victim.
Harry's biographers have even described Meghan, in their view, as one of the most bitter and least reconciled figures they have ever dealt with, though that assessment is clearly part of a much wider public debate. And according to several accounts, even Harry's own uncle reportedly dismissed her as simply opportunistic. Other commentators have gone even further, suggesting she reshaped the dynamic from the inside out. The underlying message in all of that criticism is basically the same, namely that, in the eyes of these critics, Harry did not marry a partner, he ended up with someone they describe more like a boss.
This is the natural progression for someone who has gone about things the way Harry and Meghan have. I mean, you look at how they wanted to leave the UK because of racism, because of not being protected. Oh, let's go over now to America and get, all these opportunities off of our royal titles. And then now America is not warming to them anymore. Oh, okay, let's leave America. People don't like it. Let's go down back to the UK. Well, newsflash, the people in the United Kingdom still don't like you. Like, why would you even go back to the UK?
Just look at how small the man has seemed to become. This is a grown prince who reportedly had to publicly push back against a report suggesting his own wife talks over him in meetings. Think about that for a second. People usually do not rush out to deny a story like that unless they feel it has already taken hold in the public conversation. And then there is the homesickness he seems unable to hide. Last year, he wrote openly for anyone to read that Britain will always be the country he proudly served. Royal watchers who are already critical of him read that line and ended up in the same place. To them, it came across as the writing of someone deeply homesick and maybe carrying a lot of regret. And that is where the conversation gets even more intense, because once that kind of image takes hold, every small detail starts getting read like evidence. A quiet statement, a public comment, even a carefully worded line can suddenly be treated as a clue, whether that is fair or not. That is why the criticism keeps stretching beyond one headline. Some viewers are not just arguing about one rumor or one awkward public moment. They are debating whether the entire public relationship has been shaped by appearances, damage control, and competing narratives. Supporters still say a lot of this is being blown out of proportion, but online critics keep pointing to the same gaps and calling them hard to ignore. So the story keeps lingering, not because there is any fresh confirmation, but because people think they already know how the pattern looks. And once a crowd decides the pattern matters, it becomes very difficult to pull the discussion back from that.
We all know that that's how Meghan is. We've seen it from the very beginning. So to even say that you don't do that when we clearly can see that you have done it, you continue to do it, it just makes you out to be a liar.
One of them even came right out and described him, in their view, as desperately lonely out there in California. Another went further, suggesting he is always sitting by the phone, waiting for his brother to call and invite him back home. And according to some of his oldest friends, they hardly recognize the man anymore. If you listen to the people still willing to speak, the once wild, warm, joking Harry that the public used to see has, in their eyes, been reshaped into a nervous, guarded figure who seems to check the room before he even thinks about speaking.
We know what's going to happen. I don't know how Harry is going to live part-time in the UK. It's a mess. It's a mess. And I just really feel sorry for the real royals, Catherine and William, because now they are going to have to deal with, the influx of the things that Harry's going to be doing now in their playground. This is not going to be good for the real royals. Okay, this is a disaster for them. I just don't see how they think they're going to have another shot in the UK, because things have not changed for them. They have gotten worse for them in the UK. How can you want to come back?
People who have known him for 30 years say the spark seems to have faded, at least in their view. Whatever anyone thinks about the marriage, they argue that something in him may have completely switched off. And when a man seems switched off, people start wondering if part of him is already headed for the door. In the eyes of critics, this is a prince who, according to online discussion, gave up his family, his country, and the girl many believed was his first great love for a woman whom a huge number of online observers now claim runs his schedule, his voice, and even his public image. If that is the fairy tale, some people say they are happy to pass.
Harry and Meghan both feel that America is kind of cooling on them and that it's difficult. And they want to be liked in the UK now. And that's where they're focusing, a kind of a charm offensive. And I think, and bizarre as it was, as you said, there's a kind of sense of whiplash. But I think this is Harry wanting to be liked. And he's trying to be appealing again to ordinary people who have, not enjoyed being called racist and not enjoyed the things he said about his family.
Which brings us back to this week's Whisper, and by now, it is easier to see why it caught on so quickly. The version circulating through the usual online channels is that Meghan allegedly went through Harry's phone and found texts, and that there may be another woman around his own age involved. Some social media users are even claiming that this is what has given him a sudden burst of energy about heading home, though none of that has been verified. And that is exactly why the reaction moved so fast. Because once a rumor starts lining up with the story people already believe, it spreads before anyone has time to sort out what is actually known. Online, every tiny detail gets pulled into the same conversation, and even the most ordinary gesture starts getting treated like a signal. That is also why the discussion keeps circling back to trust. People are not just reacting to one supposed message or one alleged moment, they are questioning whether anything in this situation has ever been as simple as it looked on the surface. Supporters keep pushing back and saying the claims are unverified, while critics say the pattern, at least in their view, is what matters most. So the chatter does not fade, it keeps building, because each new comment gets measured against everything that came before it. And when a relationship becomes a public storyline this tangled, even silence starts sounding like a statement. That is the space this rumor is living in now, part speculation, part reaction, and part the public trying to connect dots that may or may not belong together.
You can't bring the late Queen Elizabeth II back and allow her to live her last couple of years in peace, likewise Prince Philip. However, there is a wider plan at play, and that is still to unveil Archie and Lily on UK soil during the Invictus Games next year.
The internet has even latched onto a name, allegedly a media executive, all because of a single photo from a party. There is absolutely no proof behind that name, and I am not going to pin speculation on a stranger, so we will leave that woman out of it entirely. But the rumor itself, the simple idea that Harry's attention may have drifted somewhere else, is not exactly a hard sell to people following this story. Nobody online seems to be straining to dismiss it.
Meghan had found some text messages on Harry's phone that confirmed this information.
The veil is lifting in terms of Harry's feelings about Meghan.
After sitting through everything I just laid out, there is one twist that shows just how far this whole fairy tale has slipped in the eyes of online observers. You would think a headline about Harry and some alleged secret woman would have people online gasping or swooning. Instead, it went the other way completely. The most liked comment under the whole thing was a woman asking, who on earth would even want Harry in the first place? And she did not stop there, because she also suggested that not even Meghan, in her view, would be interested.
Harry has woken up and smelled the roses. And he's not happy because it's not roses he's smelling. He's smelling something bad. Poop.
Another wave of viewers was even more blunt, saying that if Harry were the last person left standing, she still would not spare him a second look. And plenty of others were reacting with a kind of mocking satisfaction, calling the whole thing pure karma. And that reaction says a lot about where the public mood is right now. At this point, it is not just the rumor that people are focused on. It is the way every fresh claim seems to land on top of a much bigger pile of frustration, doubt, and old opinions that never really went away. That is why the conversation keeps drifting away from the original whisper and toward the larger image people think they are seeing. Supporters may still say none of this is confirmed and that the online chatter is doing far more work than the facts, but critics are clearly treating the silence, the timing, and the public reaction as part of the story. The result is a situation where every new wave of commentary only makes the whole thing feel more exposed, even if the underlying claim remains unverified. And that is exactly what makes this so messy online, because the rumor is no longer floating by itself, it is being judged against everything people already believe about the people involved.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer.
Given that this is the same woman who, according to longtime critics online, once moved from a first husband to ending up with a prince, it is almost ironic to see the tables apparently turning now. Funny how that works, with the shoe suddenly on the other foot. A lot of people have been waiting nearly 9 years for this exact moment, the point where they feel the balance finally shifted, and they are clearly not in any rush to let it go. What was once sold as the romance of the century has now been met, at least online, with laughter and sharp questions about the man at the center of the rumors and what the other woman might be thinking. That is how far the shine has faded in the eyes of many viewers. The reaction is not admiration anymore, it is disbelief, sarcasm, and a whole lot of people acting like this was always bound to happen.
We always talk about how Meghan's like, they took my voice. Well, she's taking Harry's. She's taking his voice. She's taking, his freedoms away from him to do what he wants to do.
So this is where the whole story seems to land. For years, the version many people were sold went one way, with Meghan viewed as the one in control and Harry cast, at least by critics online, as the one trailing behind, grateful just to be in the room. This week, though, that picture appears to have flipped completely. Now he is the one surrounded by whispers. He is the one people are talking about. And according to the way online discussions are framing it, he is the one said to be homesick and carrying regret, heading back to the country he once insisted he would never live in, while she is building a life 3,000 miles away with less and less space for him in it. Whether there is another woman involved or not barely seems to matter anymore, because the bigger point, at least in the commentary, is how far this relationship image has shifted in public view.
I think that's most likely the neatest, cleanest, and most cost-effective way, let's put it that way, of resolving a problem. Because I know people would like to have a massive ruling that the king has decided in council that he's stripping Harry of his titles and the children are out of the line of succession. That's pie in the sky. That's not how things work on a legal level or a governmental level.
You do not need much context to see what people think is happening here. In online commentary, this looks like a man who lost the woman he loved in the middle of all this drama, then gave what he had left to the woman who helped build an even bigger version of it, and now cannot stop looking back at the life he walked away from. That is why some viewers do not see this as a normal rough patch in a marriage. They see it as a man, a full decade too late, trying to figure out exactly what he may have given up. And that shift in tone is exactly why the chatter keeps spreading. Once people start reading a relationship through a certain lens, every small detail gets pulled into that same storyline, and the original point gets harder and harder to separate from the public mood. Supporters still push back and say the claims remain unverified, but online critics are treating the silence, the timing, and the awkward optics as if they all point in the same direction. That is what gives the discussion so much weight right now. It is not just about who said what or whether the rumor goes anywhere. It is about how quickly people are connecting it to the bigger picture they already had in mind. When a couple becomes a constant topic of public debate, even ordinary moments can start looking loaded, and every new wave of commentary only makes the situation feel like it has raised more questions. So the conversation keeps moving past the whisper itself, and straight into the wider question of what this means for the image people thought they understood. And in that space, the reactions are doing most of the work.
Reality is that it's probably lasted longer than some of the critics would have believed it to have lasted, right? If there's still, look, nobody wants the marriage to go pop, does it? Nobody wants it, with the exception probably of Dan Wood, right? Nobody wants it, right? Nobody wants it to go pop. So, but if it does last another 3 or 4 years, it'll be a miracle. Because the other problem is, if it goes pop, the kids are going to stay in America. He's going to be living in a terrace somewhere in Preston, right? You know, when's he going to see her? I mean, it's ridiculous.
It is completely ridiculous.
He did not lose that old life because of some tragic accident. At least that is not how critics online are framing it. In their view, he gave it up himself, with a smile and a streaming deal, and only seemed to realize the real cost years after the ink had dried. They will deny that, of course. They always do, right up until the morning they do not. But for many viewers, the smiles stopped matching the fairy tale a long time ago. And once the cameras stop asking whether you are still in love and start wondering who else might be involved, the relationship picture is already changing. Someone just has to be willing to say it out loud.
Harry's never coming back to the UK. He has no interest in it, to live. Never coming back to the UK, loves his life in California. He's here forever. And that has completely changed, hasn't it? Just turned around quite quietly while we've all been looking at other things. Their eyes are on Europe again and the UK.
So where do you come down on this one? Is Harry someone who got caught up in all of this? Or did he end up living with a choice he made himself? Honestly, you could make a case either way. There is still plenty more to unpack this week, and the next solo trip or quiet misstep will probably send everyone right back into the discussion. Keep your eyes on Montecito, because somebody there looks like they may blink first. See you on the next one. What do you think about all of this? Drop a comment, like, subscribe, and share, and see you on the next one.